Hey, church, it's Danny. I'm back with another study in Judges. We'll be in chapter 18 this week. Probably break it up into sections and read and talk about it. So let's get into it. Chapter 18. In those days, there was no king in Israel. And in those days, the tribe of the people of Dan was seeking for itself an inheritance to dwell in. For until then, no inheritance among the tribes of Israel had fallen to them. So the people of Dan sent 5 able men from the whole number of their tribe, from Zorah and from Eshtaol, to spy out the land and to explore it. And they said to them, go and explore the land. And they came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. All right, so let's stop there. The tribe of Dan, they're on the move. They're looking for an inheritance among the tribes of Israel. Those inheritances were given out in the book of Joshua. They were given out also in the first book of Judges, maybe the first chapter, the first chapter or so. It goes and it kind of articulates Judah got the land, their territory, they helped fight so-and-so, and it lets you in on what the tribes accomplished as far as taking over the land, claiming their inheritance of land from the Lord. And when it comes to Dan, it says Dan could not do it, or they didn't do it, because I believe it was the Amorites, pushed them back up into the hills. They wouldn't let them come down into the plain. So they didn't inherit. They didn't push the enemy out. They didn't inherit the land that they were given. So now here we have them looking for an inheritance when they had one the entire time. So it'll develop more here through this chapter. But it starts with the familiar refrain, in those days there was no king in Israel, letting us know things aren't going the way they ought to go, as we read after that. They sent 5 able men from all the tribes, and Zorah and Eshtaol, again, those cities are familiar from the Samson story, who was also from the tribe of Dan. And they went to spy out the land and explore it. And they came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah. All right, we'll stop there. So they sent out spies. Sound familiar? Sound like Exodus stuff, you know? A lot of this will sound familiar to Old Testament stories, and then we'll see some of it pushing ahead as well. But let's keep moving. They came to the hill country of Ephraim, verse 3. So when they were by the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite, and they turned aside and said to him, who brought you there? What are you doing in this place? What is your business here? And he said to them, this is how Micah dealt with me. He has hired me, and I have become his priest. And they said to him, inquire of God, please, that we may know whether the journey on which we are setting out will succeed. And the priest said to them, go in peace. The journey on which you go is under the eye of the Lord. Then the 5 men departed and came to Laish and saw the people who were there, how they lived in security after the manner of the Sidonians, quiet and unsuspecting, lacking nothing that is in the earth, and possessing wealth, and how they were far from the Sidonians and had no dealings with anyone. Let's read verse 8 too. And when they came to their brothers at Zorah and Eshtaol, their brothers said to them, what do you report? And they said, arise and let us go up against them. For we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And will you do nothing? Do not be slow to go to enter in and possess the land. All right, we'll stop there. So this land they found, so first of all, they run to the priest. Let's go with that. In verse 8, they recognized the voice of the young Levite. So there's a few guys that I've heard that tie it to the accent of the Levite, because he was from elsewhere. I forget where in the initial chapter. But anyway, that would also tie it to some of the stuff we've seen with accents, like in the Jephthah story, I believe it was. Anyway, I don't know that that's the case, because we come across him later in the same chapter explaining who he is. So I think it's more along the lines. He was just known, famous. They recognize his voice. But again, I don't know that that's much the point. And we'll touch on that too. But they recognized the voice of the young Levite. They turned aside and said to him, who brought you here? So he tells his story. Micah dealt with me, paid me, I'm his priest, hired me. And then they tell him to inquire of God, please, that we may know whether the journey on which we're setting out will succeed. Well, then he says, and the priest said to them in verse 6, go in peace. The journey on which you go is under the eye of the Lord. So a lot of things here in this little section. It's a pretty jam-packed section. So the Levite, the priest, who was hired by Micah, that was all wrong, backwards dealings, contrary to faith in God and contrary to what they had been given and told to do. Law breaking galore, commandment breaking galore in these sections, mostly second commandment with the idols, the idolatry, the worship of them, the Levite acting as a priest with the idols, before the people to the idols. There's some 8th commandment stuff, stealing from the mom, the Dan steals the idols, coming up here in a minute. And what else? Some 10th commandment, coveting. Now they're coveting the land here when they look at Laish, and they see what they see there. But let's keep moving. Oh, well, his answer. And the priest said to them, go in peace. The journey on which you go is under the eye of the Lord. That says nothing. He just said a mouthful of nothing. what is not under the eye of the Lord? It doesn't get any more generic, doesn't get any more general, but it's safe. It's safe because whatever happens, hey, that remains true. Go in peace. The journey on which you go is under the eye of the Lord. This guy's he's a piece of work. I mean, him being hired, selling himself out to be a priest to idols says a lot. The fact that he's famous also, I think, lends to some of these issues. But okay, let's keep moving. Go in peace. There we go. Then the 5 men departed and came to Laish and saw the people who were there, how they lived in security after the manner of the Sidonians, quiet and unsuspecting, lacking nothing that is in the earth and possessing wealth, and how they were far from the Sidonians and had no dealings with anyone. And when they came to their brothers Azor and Eshtaol, they said to their brothers, what do you report? They said, arise and let us go up against them, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And will you do nothing? Do not be slow to go, to enter in and possess the land. So these guys found land, specifically Laish. They saw the people there. They lived in security after the manner of the Sidonians, quiet, unsuspecting, lacking nothing that is in the earth, possessing wealth. And they were far from the Sidonians, had no dealings with anyone. So basically, they looked at this place as not only some 10th commandment issues there, they are coveting. They saw the security. They saw the manner they lived in with quiet, unsuspecting, lacking nothing. They saw the wealth they possessed, lacking nothing that is in the earth, possessing wealth. So they saw their goods, and they were opportunistic. They saw that no one's around. They're living secure. They feel confident in their position there. They're unsuspecting. So when should Dan go to attack them, they have the advantages as far as surprise. So there's a lot going on here, and we'll develop that too more in a second in a broader sense with this story. But they came and they tell their brothers, what do you report? And they said, arise, let us go up against them. Seeing the land, behold, it is very good. So in Exodus, when they were required of faith to go in and spy out the land, they come back 10 spies with a bad report and 2 with a good one. These guys, every one of them to the man has a good report. It's faith in what at this point? Because it's not faith in God. You haven't went after your land. You haven't done the difficult thing in fighting for your land and your inheritance. You're idolatrous at this point, seeking the opinion of a priest. And that will be proven here in a minute. Covetousness, right? They want their goods, how they possess everything in the earth, their wealth. So they got all the faith in the world, in themselves. It says 5 able men from each tribe, right? So these men they're not schmucks. They're solid guys as far as their personal abilities, apart from being faithful. They are, skilled men in what they do. So again, we have men who are able, they're trusting in their own abilities, men who are willing to get up and go fight, the unsuspecting, the secure, the ones all by themselves. There's nobody around to come help them. We should go do this. And then this part is where it starts asking questions of us as the readers in these last few chapters, all the way to the end of Judges. I don't remember it doing that prior, but it starts doing it now if it hadn't done it prior. So then he says, what he says in verse 9, they go, arise, go up, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And where you do nothing, do not be slow to go enter in and possess the land. And as soon as you go, you will come to an unsuspecting people. The land is spacious, for God has given it into your hands, a place where there is no lack of anything that is in the earth. All right, we'll skip the being asked of stuff here in a second. I got the wrong part, but we'll keep it moving. So the land is spacious. God's given it into your hands, a place where there's no lack of anything that is in the earth. That sounds eerily familiar to what God has actually promised, but this is not that place. They're quick to move now. Do not be slow. Make it happen right now. Let's do it. And will you do nothing? They're considering like, hey, jump on this thing. Now's the time to strike while the iron's hot. They didn't have any semblance of that kind of faith entering the land in the first place. Hence, they don't have their inheritance. So these guys is faith in self, no faith in Christ, no faith in God at this point. Verse 11. So 600 men of the tribe of Dan, armed with weapons of war, set out from Zorah and Eshtaol and went up and encamped at Kiriath Jearim in Judah. On this account, that place is called Mahanadan to this day. Behold, it is west of Kiriath Jearim, and they passed on from there to the hill country of Ephraim and came to the house of Micah. Then the 5 men who had gone to scout out the country of Laish said to their brothers, do you know that in these houses there are an ephod, household gods, and a carved image, and a metal image? Now therefore consider what you will do. Okay, so there's the part I was looking for. So these guys are at Micah's house now, not just the 5, but the 600, the entire basically army of Dan is there at Micah's house. And so the 5 guys who were there originally were like, hey, this guy has the goods. This guy has gods. This guy has images. This guy has an ephod. Now, therefore, consider what you will do. So that, therefore, consider what you will do is not, I don't think, particularly for them. Yeah, sure, in the moment, of course. But like I said, there starts to be questions asked in these few chapters. And we, at this point, I believe, are brought in a little further and say, consider. Now, therefore, consider what you will do. And I think it's more explicit later on, but I'm jumping on this one because it's here. Consider what you will do. And we've been attempting judgment. We've been seeing how people like Samson and Jephthah are commonly judged by our own folks. And we've been trying to navigate through that and get better at making judgment calls and seeing things for what they are and letting things, just ride things out when we can't figure it out, just dealing with it. But I think this is a call to just that. Now, therefore, consider what you will do. We're looking at these guys. They're saying the right things. They got a priest that blessed them, so to speak. They've got worship on the forefront before they go into the battle. Because now they're at Micah's house, like, hey, let's get all this stuff, these gods and images for ourselves. But it's all just upside down backwards. So let's keep it moving. So anyway, before we move on, we're to consider all we've already had in this story. And then it goes on from there to verse 15. And they turned aside there and came to the house of the young Levite at the home of Micah and asked him about his welfare. Now the 600 men of the Danites, and with their weapons of war, stood by the entrance of the gate, and the 5 men who had gone to scout out the land went up and entered and took the carved image, the ephod, the household gods, and the metal image, while the priest stood by the entrance of the gate with the 600 men armed with weapons of war. And when these went into Micah's house and took the carved image, the ephod, the household gods, and the metal image, the priest said to them, what are you doing? And they said to him, keep quiet, put your hand on your mouth, and come with us, and be to us a father and a priest. It is better for you to be priest to the house of one man, is it better for you to be priest to the house of one man, or to be priest to a tribe and clan in Israel? And the priest's heart was glad. He took the ephod and the household gods and the carved image and went along with the people. Okay, so he went with them. They coveted, they want what Micah has, his household gods. He wanted what his mom had. Don't forget, he took her money. She went and made gods. Now she pronounced the curse. Now he's losing what he had, originally, the God. The curse didn't go away per se. It's trickling down. He stole. Now he's being stolen from. His mom lost her livelihood, so to speak. He's losing some of his as he feels later. You'll see his answer. He feels like he has nothing left. He was banking on all these gods and images and surely being blessed because he had the priest. I know he said that in chapter 17, an angel had. So we won't go too much into that right now. They took Micah's stuff. The priest went along with him. They told him, hey, be quiet, put your hand on your mouth and come with us to be a father and a priest. He had been told that by Micah. You'll be a father to me and a priest. And it was actually ended up being the inverse of that. He was a son and Micah treated him as a son. And he was his father. So nothing, the thing to see is nothing in these makes sense. Nothing in these fits perfectly. Everything said somewhere else doesn't quite add up in the next thing. And it's not mistakes. It's not errors. It's not someone's miscalculations in numbers. It's not any of that. It is showing the topsy-turvy nature, the just erratic, chaotic nature of pursuing any and everything other than and contrary to Christ himself. This is the way it works out. Now, it's super ugly in this book. And mind you, we're early with these last chapters. These last 2 stories are early in the book of Judges. They're probably in chapter 2 or 3, somewhere in there, because there's people here that aren't in the next one. And we actually have this story alluded to in the first or second chapter of Judges, as far as Dan not being able to conquer. So, and then they're going out and doing this. So anyway, let's keep it moving. Verse 21. So the priest went along with the people. So they turned and departed, putting the little ones and the livestock and the goods in front of them. When they had gone a distance from the home of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house were called out, and they overtook the people of Dan, and they shouted to the people of Dan, who turned around and said to Micah, what is the matter with you that you come with such a company? And he said, you take my gods that I made and the priest and go away. And what have I left? How then do you ask me, what is the matter with you? And the people of Dan said to him, do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall upon you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household. Then the people of Dan went their way, and Micah saw that they were too strong for him, and he turned and went back to his home. Okay, so right there, that's if any of that sounds familiar, basically a rehashing of the story of Jacob and Leah and Rachel. They fled Laban. Rachel had taken his household gods and his images, and they had questions of inheritance as well. When Jacob said, hey, it's time to leave, they had questions of inheritance that their father Laban hadn't given them. And so they were willing to leave. Rachel took the idols, and then Laban catches up with him, pursues him, catches up with him, and says, hey, you've taken my idols. And Jacob's like, no, I've been nothing but up front. You've done me dirty the entire time. All this time I worked for you. I took everything upon myself. I didn't look to you to pay for lost sheep and lost. I ate all the losses. I took every L, and you suffered no loss while I was in here working for you. And they was like, well, you took my gods. And he's like, well, look around, search, because none of us have your gods, and let them be, cursed or whatever, whoever you find them with. Well, he didn't find them, but Rachel did have them. And she pretended to be in her time of the month, and she's sitting on them. And she's like, oh, forgive me, Father, I can't move. She's bleeding on the idols. And that was that story. This story is much the same. Micah pursues him as Laban pursued Jacob, catches him, says, hey, you took my idols and my stuff. But Dan is not like Jacob. Dan's not willing to take any of it on themselves. They tell him, don't let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall upon you and you lose your life with the lives of your household. So in Jacob's like, no, I've done nothing but prosper you. I have taken already all the losses. If I would have stayed or done things differently and tried to work this out with you, you would have killed me. And here they are going, oh, there's none of that. There's no diplomacy. There's no conversation. It's, hey, shut up before, or we'll just kill you and everybody you're with. And then they go on their way. So again, a flipping of the narratives. They continue throughout Scripture. That's part of the thing we're looking at too, is these continued themes, the replaying of the consistent stories in Scripture, to greater or lesser magnitudes. This one's quite a bit lesser, but also with great implications for God's people. So let's keep it moving. The people of Dan took what Micah had made, and the priest who belonged to him, and they came to Laish, to a people quiet and unsuspecting, and struck them with the edge of the sword, and burned the city with fire. And there was no deliverer, because it was far from Sidon, and they had no dealings with anyone. It was in the valley that belongs to Beth Rehob. Then they rebuilt the city and lived in it. And they named the city Dan, after the name of Dan, their ancestor, who was born to Israel. But the name of the city was Laish at the first. And the people of Dan set up the carved image for themselves, and Jonathan, the son of Gershom, son of Moses, and his sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites until the day of the captivity of the land. So they set up Micah's carved image that he made, as long as the house of God was at Shiloh. All right, so that's the end of the chapter. So Dan, they have their gods, they have Micah's belongings, they have the blessing of the priest and the priest himself. And they go and they come to Laish, quiet and unsuspecting people, and they strike them with the edge of the sword and burn the city with fire. And there was no deliverer. And then here's the priest. So people of Dan set the carved images for themselves in verse 30. Jonathan, the son of Gershom, son of Moses, and his sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites, till the day of the captivity of the land. Okay, so there's why. I mean, it's not super important, I don't think, but there's why I think they just knew who this guy was. I mean, he's the grandson of Moses. Probably pretty good odds that he's famous in Israel. And they recognized his voice, probably as his voice, not as an accent from a certain region. Going back to the earlier part of the chapter. But that's almost neither here nor there as far as what I think the overall picture is here. So we have, just to rehash the story, we have Micah stealing in a house where no father's named, just the mother and the son. And she blesses the son, for giving the money back. And so for starters, let's just take that one. For starters, there's no father, for all intents and purposes, in the household. So the mother is the one dictating how things go. Idolatry in the mother's heart, in Micah's heart. Then Micah gets his idols, goes and establishes them. Sees a priest, hires them, gives them wages, clothing, and all the things he listed that he offered the priest were things that God had said, this is how you will receive these things: clothing, wages, your room and board, basically. And the exact verbiage is used in the earlier books of the Old Testament. I think it's Leviticus, either that or, I'm pretty sure it's Leviticus. We'll just stay there and go with that. But anyway, so those things were supposed to be coming as the Lord had dictated, not Micah. So we have a mother who's off base, a son who's off base, a priest who's off base. We have a tribe come in who's off base, right? And then they're all idolatrous. And the thing to hear, the thing with the voice part, when they recognized the voice of the Levite, the tribe of Dan, when they came to Micah's house. I mean, just think, push that out to where it ought to be. We ought to be, the people of God ought to be recognizing his voice. Christ says it very, very clearly. My sheep know my voice. That was no less true in the Old Testament, that God's people knew God's voice, coming out of somebody else's mouth, as it always did, through Moses and Joshua and so on and so forth. But here, coming out of this priest's mouth, they recognize his voice and they recognize him as a legit priest. So they don't know at the point. They're dull to the voice of God. And in a nutshell, if they don't hear his voice, who are they not? They're not God's people. You have ceased to be God's people. You have become indistinguishable, is that the correct word, from the people in the land, right? With gods and doing all the things they're doing. And God had warned them of that. Don't leave these things here. Don't leave these people here. Don't allow them to stay around. You have to eradicate them, get them out of the land, because these things will happen. And here, very early on in the story of Judges, in the occupation of the land, these things are happening. And now, from level to level, it's in the home. It's the mom and the son, in, for all intents and purposes, again, a fatherless home, right? So there's a feminine aspect. There's a cowardly aspect in Micah. Now, when we see that, when he turns around, he won't fight for his gods. They're not that valuable. And there is the priest, who's like, oh, he's just looking for hire. He's not holding the line as a priest, as a Levite. He's not ministering to the people. He should have showed up at Micah's house and said, hey, man, this is all wrong. Let me, get rid of this stuff. And let's get things set right. But he didn't. And he showed up there already out of line. It's not like Micah had to really persuade him. He saw what was going on. He heard and he liked. So his heart was already astray when he showed up to Micah's house. Hence the wandering around. Micah's heart was already astray. His mom's heart was astray when she pronounced the curse and when she went and made him gods. Everybody here has left the Lord. Everybody so far. And the tribe of Dan, 600 and some odd guys here, plus their kids and animals, and who knows where the wives are. But either way, it's in the household. It's in the church, so to speak, with the priest. It's in the broader culture, the community with the Danites. Early on, too. Let me keep reiterating. It's early on. This has happened quick. They got in, like, hey, we're saved. Hey, the Lord's given us the land. And then, boom, just took the back seat, took the easy route. And we see Dan taking the cowardly route as well. They couldn't defeat the Amorites initially. Therefore, they wouldn't go do it anymore. And they had the promises of God. It didn't play out the way they wanted, but they gave up on the promise. Just like that. God did not remove the promise. He didn't give up on it. Had they asked him what to do like they did the priest, they would have probably they would have gotten another answer from an actual man of the Lord. Whether it be remove sin in the camp, we've seen that portrayed before when the people of Israel lost battles. There's plenty of other avenues that could have been taken other than this, hey, everything you do is under the sight of the Lord. Generic, nothing noise coming out of the priest's mouth. Danites, cowards, saw people all by themselves, living life, doing their own thing, not bothering nobody, all alone, having everything they need. Their needs are met. They have wealth. And Dan coveted. Dan saw the easy route. I think even more so than the coveting, we see just this overall cowardly culture and even a feminine dictated, matriarchy kind of country with the mom involved. And it's not the last time we'll see this weird stuff, but we've seen it before. In the book of Judges, women have a prominent role in the book for good and bad. But yeah, culture at large is a mess. We'll just stick to the Danites in this one. But to end it, yeah. So anyway, Micah, had he stolen, his mom could have rebuked him and showed him the correct way, right? If she was a godly woman. Micah having the priest come, the priest could have done that, rebuked him, sacrificed for his sins, and he could have done that, set him on the right path. But he wasn't right either. Then Micah, they come and see the priest, and they don't do it. So in Israel's history, we see Israel, when they're doing well, united and confronting other tribes in Israel that aren't doing well. We've seen that in the book of Judges. You guys are off base, and there's tribes that hold the line. Well, this tribe didn't hold the line for the Lord. So nobody is doing what they ought to be doing here in this story. Cowardice is prevalent in this story. It's a very prominent thing, and it's in the next one as well. So as much as Samson was no holds barred, just all over the map, we don't know what to make him over times. There was no cowardice, So what would we rather have? Again, we have the city of Laish burned. Here by the tribe of Dan. Well, this fire aspect throughout the book of Judges, there's two sides. What side do you want to be on? Fire is inevitable. The burning, our Lord our God is a consuming fire, right? Well, what side are we on? That's what all the images this book is painting. It's inevitable. There is a consuming fire, and his name is God, right? So what side are you on? It's happening. It's happened throughout the book of Judges, and there's people on both sides. There's people, fire that burns or fire that purges unto greater glory, right? So there's all these themes wound up in here. There's a ton, like I said, in these chapters. I tried to get to narrow it down to a little bit, but we're still at a half hour. But whatever, we're here. So then let's see. Oh, the cities. There was no deliverer. Let's see, in these last few chapters, that was an important one because it was far from Sidon, verse 28, and they had no dealings with anyone. If it was in the valley that belongs to Beth Rehob, then they rebuilt the city and lived in it. They named the city of Dan after the name of Dan, their ancestor. That is not the city. So it's the cities they came from. Sorry. Oh, Kiriath Jearim in Judah. All right. So the tribes of Dan took the 600 men and they camped up there back in verse 11 and 12. And they camped in Kiriath Jearim in Judah. I count this place called Mahanadan, which is the camp of Dan. They passed on from there to the hill country of Ephraim and came to the house of Micah. So that Kiriath Jearim. So again, like I said, it ties to the future. We'll see the hill country of Ephraim in the next story. We will see Judah in the next story. We will see, probably most importantly, leading to this, that Kiriath Jearim. So it was the place of the tribe of Benjamin, which is in the next, or the Gileadites, the next story. I know we're not there, so if you're not familiar, it won't really ring true yet till we get there. But anyway, I think a big point, a big hinge is the cities where Dan camped, because they brought this idolatry with them, right? They camped in Kiriath Jearim, which is an allotment. I forget specifically, but the next story has the Gileadites and the Benjamites. And I think it was the Gileadites that portion of land was allotted to them. And it was right next to the tribe of Benjamin's land. It's either that or vice versa. So get me whatever I'm wrong. It's at least one tribe or the other owned the land, and one of them was next to it, right? So you can flip those next two tribes in the next story, however it plays out correctly. But I think that goes to show we have a household idolatry. We have, in Micah and his mom, we have a priestly idolatry, the church, the Levites, idolatrous. And we have a tribe, idolatrous, in the Danites. And where they take this with them to this camp is the land, again, of the Gileadites or Benjamites, whatever it is, and it's neighboring one of those tribes as well. This stuff spread. The idolatrous nature of these people, the commandment breaking, the flat out sinful works that they do, and faithless works that they're not trusting the Lord to provide as the Levite. They are not, as the Danites, taking the land that they were given. They're not seeking their inheritance. It was too hard work. Well, they're in this land and it spreads. The next story, you see Gileadites and the Benjamites, idolatrous, unfaithful. Just the next one's a nasty one, right? Where he chops the concubine up in 12 pieces. Now, does anybody know where we're going with this? But anyway, it spread. Household, church, tribe of Dan. They're in the city of one of these other tribes. Then you see that tribe in the next story, which is neighboring the city of the other tribe. And you see that tribe failing in the next story. So there's plenty of lessons here. Again, what voice did they recognize? The wrong one. They didn't recognize the voice of the Lord, and carry that on up to when Christ showed up. His people didn't recognize his voice, and we as his people ought to. There, I'll leave that there. And I think that I might want to just end it there. It's already 30 something minutes. I don't want to keep dragging it on, but yes, let's be people of faith. Let's be contrary to the people of Dan. Let's weed out any idolatrous aspects in our lives, any sinful aspects in our lives. We see that it's contagious. We'll see that it's contagious in the next one. It doesn't stay at home. It doesn't stay in the priest's life. It doesn't stay relegated to one tribe in Israel. It permeates all of culture, the households potentially, and it turns into all the previous stories in Judges, just about. Probably the other 17 or 16 chapters just about is after this. So with that said, I'll leave it there. Again, we've been asked to judge, consider what we're going to do. In verse 14, let's do that. Let's not be as these people are. Let's start to judge or grow in our capacity to judge and judge well, to recognize idolatry, to be those willing to hold the line, be completely unlike anybody in these pictures. The broader culture is for all intents and purposes, like the Danites. We have to be the priesthood to hold the line of the church. We have to be contrary to Micah's house and hold the line in our homes, mothers and fathers, whoever you be, kids too. And as a culture in the church, a culture within a culture, we ought to be holding the line. Dan was a culture, a tribe within the tribes. Israel was a culture, a peoples within the peoples of the world, and they didn't do what they should have done. So we, in like, are all those things. We are households. We do consist of households. We do consist of priests. We are all the priesthood of God at this point. And we do consist of a peoples, of a body, of a culture within a culture, of a body within a body, peoples within peoples around us. And it is just too important. If any of these stories have sucked, any of these stories have had nasty stuff in them, and the next one is getting worse, then we ought to be able to judge. What will we do now? Let's take a look at this. What do we see how it acts in the negative. We see how it permeates culture overall. Let's turn it around and be those people that live for Christ and hold the line as we ought to. Enough said out of me. I got long-winded on this one. Love you guys. Have a good week.